Hey, we are here on the podcast with Mr. Gilbert Chestnut. Gilbert is a proven leader with over 35 years of experience with one of the largest corporations in the world, with the U.S. military, and with the federal government. Gilbert is an ordained elder. He's a husband of 45 years, father, grandfather, 5 children, 15 grandchildren. But what we're focusing on today is his very excellent book called The Leadership Stride, which opens the door to habits you can carry forward into professional and personal settings for the rest of your life. We're talking about team building, effective processes, becoming your best leader and your best self, leadership enhancement, development. We'll have a fun conversation. We'll laugh, we'll cry, we'll have some ahas, some insights. So Gilbert, glad to be speaking with you.
Robert, thank you for having me.
Glad to have you. And so we gave you a little bit of an introduction and hyped you up, but what is your current focus and passion? What are you all about?
Robert, leadership is my passion. As you just discussed in the bio, I'm retired now. And I was challenged trying to decide if it was time for that transition. One of the things I struggled with was the fact that developing leaders was something I've been doing for decades. And as I retired from the private sector, now I was faced with, man, the thing I enjoy the most, I will no longer have an opportunity to do. But all the other stuff that was associated with leadership in secular, in the secular arena, kind of said, it's time for you to kind of make that transition. So I did that. But I'm so thankful that now I'm able to continue developing leaders in a way that separates all the other mundane stuff associated with reports and numbers and things like that. So I am so excited about the opportunity to be able to reach people that I don't even know, can't physically touch through the leadership stride.
I love it. So you are keeping your relevance alive and you're continuing to make a difference. And you're so right that it's easy to get stuck in the buzzwords and in the paper shuffling of leadership, but then you hear about how leadership can be exciting and how you can help people in a small way. Like if you even are part of a Big Brothers Big Sisters, Kiwanis Club, Boys and Girl Scouts, and then even in the workplace, it goes both ways, right? Even if you're just an employee or just someone that works there, you can step up and you can be your best self. And so what's a good starting point here, right? If we want to think about and talk about the exciting part of leadership and making a real change instead of just the same old stuff that's been said, what's new and fresh and exciting to talk about with leadership?
Well, I think leadership in itself, if you've been doing it for a while, or even if you're just beginning to have a leadership role, a lot of times you're feeding or you're adapting based on what other people say leadership should be. But it's just like a house, Robert. Even in a house, you find ways to give it a new look, a fresh perspective. The leadership stride offers us an opportunity to take something that we've been doing for a while, but add a whole fresh new look to it. And that's what's so exciting. And you can do it for teenagers, for folks even younger than the teenage. I think about when I joined the 4-H club when I was a child and how I was cast in the leadership role, even at the age of 10 years old. I didn't know then what I know now, but I can see how an understanding of how impactful leadership is for all ages. It has so much impact on our decisions as we grow, as we become adults through that life cycle. So I'm just so excited that leadership is something that can take hold at an early age and last throughout adulthood if it's handled correctly. Because leadership is influence, but it's also influence in action.
Wonderful. And there's so much built in and connected to leadership, isn't there? There's the self-confidence and the people skills and the communication and the problem solving. And so why is this called the leadership stride? When you think of like if you're on a stride, you're like you have a pace and you're walking and you have momentum. But why is this called the leadership stride specifically?
The leadership stride came to me, Robert, because throughout my career, there have been times where my organization or even myself personally would want to do something about our culture. We would want to do something to create a culture of consistent, effective leadership, but we would take it a step at a time and we would implement a little bit here, a step here. We would involve this group, that group, but never did we really involve the entire team at the same time. Of course, you have different levels of exposure, you have different levels of training based on the leadership roles, but everybody is engaged at the same time in that movement. So, hence, you have a stride where you have the whole team involved, moving in the same direction, maybe at different levels, but now you're moving much further, not quickness, not necessarily in a race, but you're getting more accomplished with a stride, versus a step.
I love it. And I think about this idea a lot. Whenever I feel down on myself and I feel like, oh, I could always be doing more, I tell myself that it's more important to have that habit of consistency. And if a problem is too big, maybe I need to break it down into smaller pieces, or instead of killing myself and working 12 or 16 hours on something, just do 1 hour a day and just make this consistent progress and get towards a goal. And when you hear about these things like leadership, you hear about these analogies like you have the stride, or like there's like the orchestra idea where like different people are all working together, but they all have their different roles. And so where do people sometimes go wrong with this when it comes to like leadership and communicating and making the team work? Like, what are some common pitfalls?
In the leadership stride, Robert, you'll find a chapter called Culture Agents. Now, we all know what change agents are. Change agents are those people that are engaged in changes in processes, changes in systems. But when you start talking culture, now you're talking about actually connecting with the thought process of people rather than what I like to refer to as reformation, where you're talking structure, you're talking, those things that are on the surface. But when you start talking transformation, which is what the leadership stride focuses on, now you're talking about how a leader thinks, how he perceives his leadership role, their leadership role. And so it makes all the difference in the world when it comes to being successful. Because let's face it doesn't take much to change a system. You just put a new process in place. But when you start talking about actually trying to change the way a person perceives actions and how their whole thought process is different, no longer is it just about the numbers. No longer am I just telling people what to do. But now my thought process is, what can I do to add value? What can I do to help this individual develop so that not only do I gain their buy-in and the accomplishment of the objectives, but now they feel like I'm invested in them. So the leadership stride focuses on bringing about change in culture through the thought process versus having people come on board to address changes in processes.
I like it. And it seems like a tricky topic, right? Dealing with people. I think just yesterday I had a friend tell me that all these things like business and processes and productivity, it would all be easy if not for the people, right? People are tricky as far as getting the idea buy-in, getting them emotionally involved and excited. And so do you have any techniques or thought process in doing that? Let's say that you say you want to have this change happen in an organization. Maybe not everyone is excited, or maybe people could be having a better outlook on things. Like, what can be done in order to get people just more enthusiastic, more on board?
The leadership stride, Robert, points out um, different principles in those 8 chapters that are very easily applied. But what they do, they help to engage everybody on the team. Not only do they engage and get everybody focused in the same direction, but the communication at this level is so key. You have to communicate with everyone on the team. The relationship with the custodian is just as important as the relationship with your right hand man. Throughout the team, everybody has to be a part of the communication process. Once we can do that, then we educate the team, the entire team, on what the direction is and why we're going about this change in direction. And then to empower those on the team is huge because when we can empower those in the team, we help them, Robert, identify and recognize their own potential. People don't know how much potential that lies within them until someone comes along that cares enough to invest in them and help them nurture to manifestation all their potentials is locked on the inside.
Wonderful. So we need to communicate and we need to empower people so that way they can see what's possible and get excited about what they themselves accomplish. And you hear a lot about this with the military, especially, right? You hear about, say, there's someone who's graduating high school, might be a troubled kid, might be coming from a bad family, might not know what their future or their career looks like, and you hear about how they get into the military and they completely transform, right? They find their purpose, they go through this period of stress and having to step up and find responsibility. And so can you speak to that a little bit, because I've never been in the military, have no firsthand experience, but I'm really curious because like the military especially seems like quite the transformation machine, right? You hear this reputation of, it's like you get these kind of uncertain youthful kids go in and they come out of it with just all these skills and all this like hardenedness. So I mean, tell us what you think about this kind of military transformation process.
Well, Robert, I can speak to that personally. I grew up in Emporia, Virginia, Freeman, Virginia. I actually went to school in Emporia, Virginia, small, rural city. Freeman, very small community. I joined the military right out of high school. I went through my training, and all of a sudden, here's a guy that had never really been out of Freeman, except maybe for a couple of weeks here and there to visit relatives, and I'm sent to Germany. Wow. So you're talking about going from one extreme to the other. And man, what I discovered was how impactful those who understand leadership, even though the way they went about it wasn't quite the greatest, but they achieved the goal because they got a young man just out of boyhood, coming into being a man. They helped me to see how important it was. People have always liked me. So I always had the influence and the ability to attract folks, but I didn't know how to use it until I joined the military. So the Army helped me see that not only did I have value, but how I could utilize my influence, even though my rank was the same as others, but my ability to influence their decision was something that helped them find themselves. There are guys, friends that I still have today. We were all there together. They've all gone on to be very successful in leadership in various paths, but we all come back to what we experienced during that time for those first 3 years in Germany, where the principles that the Army instilled in us, and they even tell me how impactful my perspective on leadership was to them, even though I was a country boy with no real experience myself.
Very nice. So you had this untapped potential, these natural skills. You help people. You got the feedback, the encouragement that what you did helped others, and it was kind of this two-way process, and that's wonderful to hear. And so, as far as the podcasting and the conversation and the storytelling goes, it's always fun to hear about like moments of stress and overcoming adversity. So, in all your decades of your careers and adventures, was there ever a time when you just didn't know the way forward, when you were just in a panic and not sure where to continue? Is anything come to mind as far as failure or stress of that sort?
Well, yeah, I had an opportunity, Robert, to quit, to be honest. Quit not necessarily my job, but quit my focus on my role as a leader. I was told one thing by my organization, those my superiors, that a certain thing would happen if I did a certain thing. I held up my end of the bargain, and a few years later, when the opportunity came for them to hold up their end of the bargain, it didn't happen for reasons that we won't get into. However, I really felt betrayed. And I had an opportunity that I was at a crossroads, where I could have just said, you know what? And I was really thinking, you know what, man, why even bother? I'm just going to come to work every day, draw this paycheck, make sure the job gets done. But why should I care about developing other leaders when the leaders who were supposed to be responsible for developing me let me down? But that's where I came to a place that I call in the leadership stride, leadership true, where there has to be an intersection with the job that we do, the responsibilities we have. They meet with our principles and our values. And it was that intersection that I had to maintain, because if I ever have a job where I'm not able to apply the principles and my values, I believe in helping people, and I was determined not to let anyone or anything prevent me from helping others find their true potential, being the leader that they can be, being their best leader now is what I call it. So that was a crossroads for me, and I felt like had I decided to go another direction, you and I wouldn't be here talking today.
Wonderful. And you stuck to your guns. And that this is an interesting idea to think about what are your principles and values, and then to be careful and to navigate not compromising or not letting the negativity influence you, right? Like you hear about this term quiet quitting, and they apply that to your job and your employment, but you can also, quiet quit your marriage or your family or even like your future career. It's really easy and tempting to physically still be there and still do what you're supposed to, but do like that bare minimum. And that's a tricky situation to navigate, right? Especially if the situation is not ideal, to maybe say, well, like, why is that? And kind of have the more long-term thinking and make the more strategic decisions and saying, well, if I'm not fulfilled, if I'm surrounded by just people who are not necessarily challenging me, then maybe it is time for a more of a change in the future. And so it's all just kind of interesting topics to think about. But as far as what's in your book and as far as leadership goes, is there a topic that is maybe not discussed enough? Is there something that you think deserves more awareness these days?
I think adversity, as we all have heard, adversity brings out true character. I believe that, in the midst of adversity as a leader, that is the opportunity that we have to reflect on what our goals are, what are our true aspirations, what are our values, what are our principles, and not allow ourselves to be consumed by the moment. It's one thing to be present in the moment, Robert, but it's something totally different to allow the moment to consume us. Those around us are looking to us for leadership. They're watching our dispositions. They're watching changes in our expressions and our body language. So we have to, within ourselves, at those moments of adversity, when tensions are high, those are the moments that we need to reconnect with those things that make us who they are, rather than allowing the situation and the circumstance to dictate who we are.
I like that a lot. You hear about these phrases like knowing what you're really made of, and this adversity moment is a chance to be a good example and to power through it. And I like the way that you put that, where it's important to be in the moment, but don't let the moment control you and push you around. And we've all had weaknesses like that, right? We all get mad or in the situation and say, okay, I'll make this drastic decision or I'll do this thing. And so you're saying, well, it's important to be aware, but we also have this power, this agency to make the smart decisions. And so, I mean, we've kind of touched on all these cool subjects, but as you know, a conversation is just a collection of ideas. And if someone wants the big picture, if they want the step by step, then they need to get the book, The Leadership Stride. So tell us about where we can get this book, and do you have a website or a larger business, or what should people know about you, and what's the call to action?
Thank you, Robert. I am the owner of GC Consultation. Again, GC Consultation. Our website is gcconsultant.org. There you can order the book. There's a link there on the website that connects you with Amazon. You can order the book from Amazon, but you can also just go into your browser and order it from Books A Million or Barnes and Noble or Walmart, any of those major stores that carry books. And the other thing is the website offers you an opportunity to find out what GC consultation is all about. It's all about enhancement and development. I am so elated by the fact that I have individuals that I'm working with that every time we have a session, the light bulb comes on, and they realize that, man, this is something that I know is going to make a difference in my life. Well, if you go to that website, you have an opportunity to schedule a session with me by phone. And it just offers you a little bit more about my background. I get into so many different things to try to help people be the best that they can be. You won't see a lot of it on the website, but something as simple, Robert, as resume building. Resumes are so critical. It's more than just filling out a piece of paper. Resume gets us to the door. I help people with interview preparation because once you get to the door, you got to get in the door. So there's just so much that I do that GC Consultation does to help people seize opportunities that otherwise may not be available.
I love it. And just having this conversation with you makes me realize how important it is to get that outside help, because it's so easy to get stuck in our own thoughts and like you said, say, "Oh, why should I do something as mundane as updating this resume?" And you're saying it's, well, to get your foot in the door, but that's only the beginning. And so there's definitely value in showing up, being the best that you can be, and then saying, well, even like this, I'm dreading step one, but if we can get past step one, there's like steps 2 through 17 still ahead of you. So there's even more to be done than you ever imagined. And you will have to become a stronger person than you are today in order to get there. And so gcconsultant.org is that website where you can find out about Gilbert and his consulting and his book and so much more. And as we wrap up and wind down our conversation here, Gilbert, I always enjoy ending on a powerful quote or lesson. And you're a man of many words. You've written a book. We've had this conversation. So does anything come to mind as far as a powerful, inspiring, motivational type quote or lesson from you to really cap things off?
Robert, as leaders, we must understand and appreciate that the impact that we have goes beyond those that we lead, but it affects and impacts those that we lead because they're going to base a lot of their leadership on how we lead them. So our reach goes much further than we think it does. We need to make it count.
Excellent. It's the butterfly effect, right? And as we think about that, let's get The Leadership Stride on Amazon or wherever books are sold these days, as the phrase goes, by Gilbert Chestnut. And the website is gcconsultant.org. Gilbert, wonderful speaking with you today.
Thank you so much again, Robert. Thanks for having me.